Hi,
you?
how are you? Nice to see you.
So nice to see you. Congratulations on another season. I'm so excited. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your production schedule to speak with
Yeah,
me.
of course, my
Very
pleasure.
grateful. We are going to be talking spoilers up until the premiere episode, so you can say anything from that, and then we're going to hold it till after it airs. But we do have a 6 month time jump, so I wanted to ask, were you able to find out some details that happened during that time period that we're missing? Are we going to find out as audiences? And if not, is there anything you kind of came up with personally of what Buck was going through that you were willing to share?
Sure. I don't think the show is gonna dive too much into what those 6 months have looked like beyond where the characters are now that we find them. And the trauma at the end of season 8 is, as you say, now 6 months in the past, and as humans do, you compartmentalize and you move on in different ways. So we're at a more evolved state than you would have last seen us and dealing with things slightly differently. So everybody's slightly more settled, but the 118 is still very much restructuring still and adjusting.
Yeah. And obviously, Hen and Eddie are now paired as partners. How is that going to kind of change Buck and Eddie's dynamic since they've been partners for so long? And how does Buck personally feel about this change?
Yeah, I mean, Buck is not having the greatest time dealing with it. But mostly I think just because there's so much change that he's had to deal with in the past episodes. I think it's just another thing that's different, you know? It's not that he hates Hen or that he doesn't want, them to be friends. It's just another change that he has to deal with on top of everything else. And it's just something more that he doesn't want to have to deal with because he just wants everything to go back to normal.
Yeah, I feel like he's someone who very much likes it when it's steady rather than constantly changing. And obviously, with the loss, I feel like he kind of needed things to stay the same. So I'm sure that's going to be something we kind of seen throughout the season.
Exactly. And so he'll make comments on it and he'll take little jabs, but not from any kind of malicious place.
Of course, of course. And there's a scene with Buck and his new nephew, which I loved to see, where he mentions basically that he expected to kind of turn around when the 118 is arguing and see Bobby there. Where do you think he is kind of in that adjustment and healing process since he is still working at the 118, aka Bobby's house,
Mm.
without Bobby? That's not going to get any easier, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's a case of it not being consciously present in his day to day, right? He's not in every moment thinking, oh, I used to do this with Bobby, but it's in those quieter moments. It's when the chaos isn't happening around him and he's just spilling his heart out to his nephew that you take note and you register like, oh yeah, this is different now. I don't think it's always at the forefront. I think it's when as I say, the world around you quiets that you really get to dive into how you're truly feeling.
And this is a question I was really excited to ask you because you made that video on Instagram basically saying that bisexual men, people sometimes say, are just too scared to come out as gay. And you really wanted to prove that isn't the case because obviously it isn't. And you wanted to kind of hammer that point home in this upcoming season and delve deeper into that, which I know is something the audiences really want to see. Have you had any conversations about that of what we're going to see in season 9? And if not, or if so, in your own opinion, what would you like to see out of the storyline?
Yeah, no, it will be addressed throughout the season, and Buck will find himself in situations where he talks very openly and freely about the fact that he is attracted to more than one gender. And I think it's important for the show to do that because, I think there is some naivety around it for certain audiences. And I don't think it's intentional. Sometimes it's just from lack of exposure to something, right? If you live somewhere and you don't happen to know anybody bisexual, then maybe you don't understand it. So I think for a show like this with such a widespread and varied audience to get to tell those stories is really lovely and really important and a chance to spread an education on the subject. So, it's not going to be done it's gonna happen in a very natural way on the show, in a way that Buck is just dealing with it and just going through it. And it's not like, hey, this is a PSA. It's just part of Buck's experience and he's figuring things out.
Love that. He's such an amazing character for representation. I've loved his story, and I know the audiences are going to really love to see that continued. And last time we spoke, you had mentioned how Buck is kind of in this headspace where he's looking to step into the next iteration of himself post Bobby. Can you kind of preview what that's going to look like now that you've gotten to film a little bit? Obviously, no spoilers, but whatever you would be willing to
Sure.
tease.
Yeah, I think he's gonna get to make Bobby proud. I think he's gonna get to take the lessons that he has learned, from the pilot up until the end of season 8, that he has learned from Bobby and help pass those on to those around him and really show that he has embodied them and he has taken them on and become somebody new because of Bobby. And now it's his chance to do that for others around him.
Definitely. And you actually led me into my next question perfectly because I always love, obviously, when I get to kind of watch a show like this, seeing the character evolution. What do you think season one, pilot episode Buck would think of where he is now starting season nine?
Yeah, I think he'd be pretty impressed, if I do say that. No, but in the sense that one thing I love about Buck is that he has grown, he has matured, and he has become a really great firefighter, but he hasn't lost the essence of who he is. He is still somebody that wears his heart on his sleeve, that wants to run first into the fire. He didn't lose that rawness that he used to have. He just learned to channel it better. So I think he's still the same Buck. He just knows now how to apply it in a more productive way.
So perfectly said. Oliver, thank you so much. I always really, really love getting to speak with you. It's
Thank
such
you,
a
Sophia.
pleasure.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. So nice to see you.